The Thuney trade changed the timeline, and now they got to get after it. What does it mean for free agency? Coming up next on Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome in, folks. It is a Friday edition, and we're brought to you today by FanDuel. New customers can get over there and get $150 back in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Go check it out at FanDuel.com. We have a lot to go over. The fallout from Joe Tuney. I hope that you saw yesterday's show as we had that pre-recorded. And Tuney caught probably both of us by surprise. We'll talk through that, but it's about what happens next that is the more important. So we're going to talk targets later in the show. Who are the leaders and what are the circumstances around them? That's coming up later. The free agency is now, I think, more on the table than it was before this trade. And what does that do to the priorities, both in scouting, in what you do, in cap, et cetera, et cetera? That's coming up next. But we start with who's affected mostly by the Joe Tuney trade and what does it mean for each of them? We're going to get to that right now. This is Chris Clark from KC Chiefs Corner. I'm Ryan Tracy from RGR Football and NFL33.com, as well as Rogue Analytics and Performance Consulting. Really excited about this process. Thank you for making us your first listen. Check out another Locked On show for your next listen. Make sure you get over there because we are free for you 5 days a week plus. You can get that much more on our text line at 816-357-8781. Fallout is a negative term in most cases. For some players, this is a positive. There is an opportunity here. This all comes from, I think, a domino after the Trey Smith franchise tag. You didn't have enough cash to go around. You had to make this deal. Everybody wins. Happy for Joe, happy for the Bears, happy for Caleb Williams. But what does it do for the Chiefs? A number of players are going to be affected by this, and they're not all guards. One guy's listed as a tackle right now. Kingsley Suamataia has now been mentioned 3 times since the postseason began about moving into a guard position. Now it makes a whole lot more sense that they really believe that. And I think as of right now, he has to be, I think, probably the leading candidate for that job at left tackle. Do you think I'm wrong?
Yes, because I think it's leading candidate for left guard. You said left tackle.
Oh, sorry. See, yeah, I'm in a rut.
To be clear, though, I do think that the Joe Tuney trade actually was not an issue of Smith getting tagged. I think it was actually they probably have been working on this Tuney trade for a week, and they thought that they could get it done. So that's why they tagged him. They didn't have the money if they weren't going to be able to get a trade done, and they weren't going to cut him. So to me, I think that's really what this comes from. When you look at it, though, I think you're right. I think Suamataia probably is the guy that is the likely starter, I guess, in OTAs, if you want to call it that. And we'll go from there. There's a couple of guys that it could affect, though.
And those do include other people with maybe more experience. A lot of folks are going to say immediately, well, Caliendo started in the Super Bowl. He's got to be the guy that steps in there. Well, if you're happy with what happened in the Super Bowl, then good luck to you, because I don't think the Chiefs are. I'm certainly not. And I do think that while he's a valuable backup, I don't think he is starter material. I think that showed out down the stretch. So what we have to prepare for is somebody else to be in that spot.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And I would also say that you can have a backup that you know is not going to be good against certain teams in the league, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. The reality is, though, is you get into the playoffs and you get into the Super Bowl and you get into your backup offensive lineman, you're generally not going to win. That's just kind of the way it goes, and that's kind of what happened with the whole Caliendo situation. I think that he could probably play decently against 15 to 20 teams in the league, but you get to those upper tiers that have great interiors, you're going to struggle. And that's not really a knock on him. He's not that type of player. He's not a guy that I think should be a starter. So I hope that Suamataia can step in and be that guy.
Yeah, I hope so as well. We don't know that that's going to happen, but it is right now the most likely case. It's not the only case. Something could be made of Hunter Norzad, who I think we did see him play, I thought was very positive. I thought he could handle multiple jobs. I really see him as the future, the next Nick Allegretti that can do a little bit of everything, to tell you the truth, rather than a specific starting spot. But I could see a competition between him and Suamataia at this point. Could you?
Yeah, I think that there could be a competition. I think that the Chiefs are going to give Suamati every chance to win that job because I'm sure that they want to have their second round pick be that guy. And Norzad is probably looked at as being a valuable backup because he can back up multiple positions on the offensive line. I think that's really what their thought process is with all of this. And the reality is you need to be 8 deep probably on offensive line and feel good about your 8. And I don't think Kansas City was there last year. I don't know how many deep I think that they would say that they probably were. You can obviously say the 4 starters outside the left tackle, I think they felt pretty good about. But how many past that? I mean, you have an offensive tackle that didn't play all year in Driscoll until the Denver game. And that was expected. I mean, that's exactly what they had him there for. So at that point, it's just a question of how are you going to do this? How are you going to shuffle it going forward? If Driscoll makes the roster this year, he has to be able to contribute. And I don't think that they figured he could last year, but they didn't want to lose him because of what we talked about already in the fact that there just isn't enough offensive linemen out there.
Yeah, it is very, very thin at this point. So you have possibly a competition there. We think we know what's going on there. We always think we know what we're doing here, but right now that leaves a gaping hole at left tackle. And one possibility on this roster that I don't expect is what to do with Wanye Morris. And I don't know that they feel he can take another stab at going out to left.
Okay. You did mean left tackle. Yeah, just verifying since we were talking. Okay. Yeah, and it's possible that you're correct that they don't feel like he can do that. They didn't give him a chance after he lost the job midseason, and they went to Joe Tuney, so that says a lot. I don't know if it's injury related because he wasn't on the injury report. Lots of different things there. You know, people are talking, is Jawan Taylor going to flip to the left side? I don't know that you want to go that direction, but money-wise, that would make the most sense because then you would have a left tackle that's tied up with about the same amount of money as a good left tackle would make. But is he going to be a guy that can step in and play that position and play it well enough to be okay for next season? That's the big question. So they still have to figure out the left tackle position. Maybe they can get it done in free agency, but there's really only one guy, and I don't like that move personally.
I think for the team, there's probably more than one guy. And I think that this whole process does put a different spin on what free agency has to look like. How critical is it? That's coming up next. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started. There's no better place to get into it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place your live bets throughout the game, start to finish. Even if you missed the opening tip-off or you want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can get there. You can stay in the action. And if you want to go looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into same-game parlay. You got to love that because it's a new aspect. You can just roll it into it. If you're backing your team for a late-game rally or picking up a player who just hit a 3 and you think he's getting really, really hot, you can do that in the app, and it makes it super easy. Right now, our new FanDuel customers are getting $150 in bonus bets if you first get a $5 bet that wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets right now. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL and the NBA. If you want all that much more, go check out KC Chiefs Corner as well as NFL 33 for the written content, RGR Football for the video, as well as any of your draft materials over at rogueapc.com. We would appreciate it. Free agency is certainly first up on the plate here. We're bearing down on March 12th, new league year, set everything off and get started. To me, this lack of really even live bodies at the left tackle spot signals to me that not only do they have draft plans, which we'll talk at length about, but this makes free agency more of a reality. I thought it was a possibility. Maybe they went back to the rework heap. Now this makes it, I think, if we know about Brett Veach, who wants to get his roster squared away before the draft so he doesn't pigeonhole himself, this makes it that they are going to sign a free agent player that they think can play for them. That makes it pretty narrow, though. Do you disagree with that?
I think they want to. The question is can they? And the big question that you have right now is what are they going to do cap-wise? They're still, as of right now, over the cap by almost $3 million. Patrick Mahomes obviously can make that work very easily. They don't have to be under the cap for almost a week. And so they easily can get under the salary cap with just a move with him. But the question is what are they going to do and how much are they going to spend? I think that really depends. How much are they going to adjust on Mahomes' deal is probably going to depend on what they can get done in free agency and who they can sign. I agree with you that if they're going to try to bring somebody in, they think that it's going to be somebody that can play. It's going to be expensive, and it really narrows who they can bring in. And if they go that direction, I'm not going to be happy about it. We'll talk about it, but
Yes,
I won't
we
be
will.
happy about it because I do think that that's a huge risk on their part. I understand the thought process, but the injury history with the only real guy that's out there in the left tackle market that I think can be a franchise guy and you feel good about when he's actually playing is the big question is Ronnie Stanley. And if they want to spend the money to go get him, that's going to cost a ton of money and you're risking not having him out there.
And he's one of several, and we'll get to him here in the next group here. But the fact that they have to do this changes the math, and whether that means that they have to spend more or they have to recoup more from their stars, or they have to look at something else, maybe the structure of their deals. This puts that much more pressure on to get something done. They have to have somebody they feel can play the game. Can't be any worse than DJ Humphries, who they took a lark on, or Donovan Smith, who put in some good snaps for them but has been hurt. They have to have something, and I think that puts a little bit more pressure on Brett Veach in particular to come up with maybe some other options. But it can't be left at this point, philosophically, from my point of view, it cannot be left just to the draft. The draft class has some talent in it, but it's not as deep as last year's group was. And you're going to have to spend there in terms of draft capital to go get somebody that you feel can do the same job in this next coming season. Do they have to restructure everyone? Do they have to go after every dollar that they can recoup from Patrick, from Chris Jones, maybe even, they can't touch Kelsey if they really think that it's over. So are there any other wells to draw from, in all honesty?
Yeah, there are other wells to draw from. They could do something with Jawan Taylor. They could do something with Chris Jones. Kelsey, obviously, you can't do because he's got 1 year left, unless you're going to do void years. You technically could do something with Creed Humphrey. I don't see them really wanting to go that direction, and you're not going to get a ton of money back from a guy like Creed Humphrey. So philosophically speaking, yeah, can they do it? I don't really think that they want to go that direction because I don't see Veach changing his stripes. Let me put it that way. You look at what Philadelphia is doing. They're paying Saquon a ton of money after already giving him a new contract last year. I haven't seen the full details of that money yet, but I guarantee you a lot of it is tied up in void years down the road. If Kansas City wants to do that, they can. I just can't imagine that that's how they're going to build their roster. So I think that you have to figure that they're going to be getting money from Chris Jones and Patrick Mahomes, and those are probably your only two sources that they're probably going to do anything with. Because if you do something with Jawan Taylor, you just make next year harder if you think that you're going to possibly move on from him.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me float this past you because this is the way that I think about it, and there's probably something wrong with it, but you'll know the numbers better than I do. In effect, with the Joe Tuney trade, it tells you maybe was your only suitor for a guard trade there. You have to go get this deal done. You cannot let Trey Smith play on the tag this year. Currently 23.4 against the cap. If you get a deal done, the structure that we see them use before, they can probably get that cap number down under 8. Am I wrong?
I would imagine it's going to be 7 to 8 would be my guess.
Okay.
You're going to look at about, I don't know what the exact number is, but it's somewhere around 1.2, 1.3 million for the veteran minimum for how many years Smith has been in the league. So that's going to be part of it. And then it's going to be a proration of his signing bonus. Creed Humphrey, I think, got like a $50,000 workout bonus last year. So that's negligible and doesn't really figure into any of it. So I think, it really just comes down to what is the signing bonus going to be. If it's 20, then it's, you have an extra 4 million. So maybe you can get it under, 6. I don't know that it's going to be 20. It may be 25. It could be higher than that. But that's really what it's going to come down to is what do they want to spend in bonus wise, and how good do they feel about Trey Smith? Because that also plays into it a little bit when you're front loading a contract like that and writing a check. Now, to be clear, and we've talked about cash versus cap before, to be clear, just because they're writing him a check for a signing bonus of $30 million or whatever it ends up being, doesn't mean that it has to be paid when he signs the contract.
Right.
They could have another deal of, okay, this is a $30 million signing bonus, but you're only getting half up front and you'll get another half in 3 or 4 months. I mean, that's possible. Teams do that. I don't really know the Chiefs' prerogative in that too much and how the players deal with it. But I would imagine when you start looking at how the Chiefs have spent cash, having huge amounts of cash to be able to pay signing bonuses that would lower cap numbers like you want is probably not something the Chiefs are going to be doing on a regular basis.
Not something they've done a ton of in the past either. And I think that's as good an indicator as anything. So functionally, if we're talking 7 or 8, we're seeing that, can they ink this deal before the new league year? If so, what are they, 2 and 3 over at this point? You're getting 15 back, so you're 12 under at that point. You have a little bit of money to go spend in free agency. You have to be very creative at that point without having to do Chris Jones restructure or Patrick Mahomes restructure or take that bonus. So it gives you a little bit of breathing room, but there's still more work to do.
Yeah, because you also have to take into your draft class, which is probably going to cost you $3 to $4 million, and you're only accounting for the top 51 at this point, as opposed to when the season starts, you have to be under for close to 70 to 75 players, I would imagine, when you start looking into dead cap space from players that you sign and cut and IR and whatnot. So 12 million may sound like a lot, but a 4 or 5 off the top is probably gone to the draft class. And so I really don't think that you're talking about that much money. That gives them enough to be okay. And maybe what the option is that they will do free agency the best that they can. And they will know what their contracts are going to be. They will have either 1 or 2 or 3 guys signed or ready to sign by the time the new league year starts. They will do Patrick's deal, get them under the salary cap, and maybe just barely, maybe even just a couple $100 under the salary cap, because the thought process is that eventually they will get a deal done with Trey Smith, which will drop his number and give them the ability to function the rest of the league year, sign your draft picks, and do everything else you need to do.
Yeah. So there's still work to do, but one way or the other, they will be able to sign free agents. Who should they sign? We've teased a couple of those already. There's a list. We're going to get to that coming up next. Now, I think you've started to make a perfectly good argument for the option number 1, we'll call him. But who is it? And give me the spiel top to bottom. What's the bottom line about him right now?
Well, I think Ronnie Stanley's the left tackle 1 that's on the market right now, and whether or not he actually makes it to market, we'll know in the next couple of days. But are they willing to pay him $20 million plus a year? The problem you run into is, can you pay your tackles that kind of money? Yes, but you're already paying Jawan Taylor that kind of money, and you're in a situation where Jawan Taylor, a lot of people would argue he isn't playing up to that type of money, which I'm not going to say is right or wrong right now. That's not what we're talking about. But the reality with Ronnie Stanley is he's great if he's playing, but that's a big if. Yeah. And if you're going to pay somebody 20 to 25 million a year, which is what it's going to take to get a left tackle, I don't think you're going to be able to get something. I don't think he's going to be willing to sign something that's not going to guarantee him a ton of money. And the only way to do that, to get him in Kansas City, is to give him a ton of money and risk the chance of him not being able to play.
I agree. And I don't know that anybody's going to be willing to pay him that. If you look at over the cap, the projection is not that in any way, shape, or form. I think they have him around 6 as a market value. So I don't know if that's anywhere near the truth. But what I see from around the league is that they're not expecting him back. In fact, they're expected right now, at least with some of the local folks that pay attention, the Ravens are expected to go after another guy in purple. And that is, I think, option number 2, Cam Robinson. But the Vikings are letting him go because they don't want to pay him $20 million. So everybody's kind of in the same frame of mind anyway, that none of these guys are worth that $20 million per year dose. Do you agree with that on Cam Robinson? And do you think, what is he, a year younger, that there's any upside there?
I think there's upside, but he's played a little. I mean, he plays more, I guess I would say it that way. But if you're going to sign a tackle, I think that you're going to have to go against the tackles that are out there. And the market right now, I'm sitting here looking at it. Trent Williams has the highest average per year at $27.5 million. You get down to maybe around 9 or 10, and Jake Matthews getting 18.5. Somewhere in that range is going to be where they're going to be expecting those tackles to come in, and somebody's going to be willing to pay him because somebody has the money. I just can't see Kansas City being willing to do that because you're risking the opportunity of being able to bring in, what is that, 3 or 4 more players at least, probably. I mean, you're not going to pay him all that in year one, obviously, but that's going to take up a healthy chunk of whatever money you would have for a signing bonus. And it's going to take up a healthy chunk of your cap space because you're going to have to give him a signing bonus. So you're still looking at probably at least what Trey Smith would get in numbers close to like $7-8 million a year, probably year one for a left tackle. That I think you'd be feeling great if he played 12 games.
And that's fair. And Robinson in particular got traded just last year. So he already had one team quit on him within the last 12 months. Jacksonville sent him to Minnesota knowing that. What's really interesting to me is both these guys played the most snaps of their career, -7 for Robinson. He played 7 more snaps his rookie season than he did last season. But Ronnie played the most snaps of his career this following season. Good time to be a free agent if you've played the most that you've ever played. But Alec Johnson went back to the Rams. Joe Noteboom's up there, another 30-year-old tackle that I don't think has a great fit scheme-wise into this system.
But look at what they gave Alec Johnson, $25 million a year.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Like, that's the problem. Like, yeah, you're right. Ronnie Stanley played the most snaps he's ever played. He's played. Contract years are undefeated. Problem is, you're not going to be able to sign him for what he's going to want for a 1-year deal. Like, yeah. Because you're going to want to spread the cap hit out. So you can't give him $17, $18, $19 million in year one and just have a 1-year deal as a prove it deal. Like you kind of tried to do with Hollywood Brown.
I agree with you. And Noteboom is probably in the same realm. He only played 200 snaps last year. Played both sides for the Rams, but again, another 30-year-old tackle that they're not trying to bring back. And so that brings me to a couple other options that are bigger shots, longer shots, shall we say. And you mentioned it earlier, Jedrick Wills is a guy that is a Veach type, former first-round pick, hasn't panned out, played, I want to say, 5 games last year, and did play a decent amount of snaps, but even the Browns weren't ready to use him. So at this point, he should be drastically cheaper, but you get what you pay for, and you can't, unless the scheme change is significant and fits him in just a better way that Andy Reid and Andy Heck feel that they can get something out of him the Browns weren't able to. That is a long shot, but it is one that I feel that Brett Veach is likely to take.
It could be. And I will say this, he has something going for him that the other guys don't, and it's age. Yeah. He's 26 years old. So his best football still could be ahead of him. He hasn't played great in Cleveland, but I would like that move, and I think that you could get it done for a lot less than you would be paying Ronnie Stanley. Problem is again, you're in a situation where what are you going to offer him? I don't see him getting top tackle money, but he's still going to get middle tackle money, which is still $15 million a year. And if you're going to pay him that, that's pretty hard to swallow for a guy that, unless he becomes a Pro Bowl player, I mean, you've got a ton of money in both your tackles for the next couple of seasons.
Yeah, that's true. The last option that I truly see out here that isn't drastically older, he's still sub 30, not necessarily a tackle. Patrick Bakari's played for the Ravens for quite a bit. He does bring some nice edge to him, but he's a Swiss Army knife. He has played all over the place. Left tackle, right tackle, left guard for a full season this year. Last time Ronnie Stanley was hurt for a significant time, it was him that played left tackle for him. Yep. So a guy that has great experience and understands O-line play as a group. If you're looking for a fallback and then you have to go to the draft, I could see him as a less risky shot than Jedrick Wills, but maybe not as much upside. That if you just have to solidify so you have somebody you feel you can start at left tackle, if you can't get a draft pick, that might be somebody that they look at as well.
Yeah, but what are you going to give him for 1 year? Because that's the problem. Like, I don't disagree with you. They need to figure something out. They need to have a plan so they're not stuck trying to go left tackle in the first round. I'm with you on that 100%. Problem is anybody you go sign is going to be probably $10 million. I would think Mekari is going to get $10 million. And
yeah,
you're going to go out and draft his replacement in round 1 if you're able to get it. I guess you could, but they're not in a good situation, and this is a continuation of where they've been ever since Eric Fisher left, and Eric Fisher got injured. They haven't been able to fill out that left tackle position, and until they get it figured out, and the best way to get it figured out is the draft. But until they get something figured out at that position, I mean, Patrick Mekari is still 28 years old. Could he play another 4 or 5 seasons? Sure. But you don't really have any of the other guys out there that are going to be much better or much younger. So you're just dealing with a whole bunch of guys that it's going to be a question mark. And then you have somebody that you feel like can step in and maybe play. But is it somebody that really is going to tell the rest of the league you're not going to be looking for a left tackle in round 1? No, because you don't really have somebody. You have a piece that can maybe get you by for a season.
Yeah, you have a fall.
Which I don't think is what Kansas City wants right now.
Let me ask you this, though. Is it better than taking another risk on DJ Humphries, who I do expect them to resign?
If they can get Humphries for $5 million, I'd be okay with it. Like, if you can get a left tackle. I don't know. It's so hard.
That's
like,
the thing.
I think that they know what was going on with DJ Humphries, and maybe they want to go back to Donovan Smith. I mean, there's a couple different directions that they could go, but the reality is that you're still going to be looking at left tackle unless you go out and get a Ronnie Stanley, and then you're maybe not looking at left tackle, but you probably spent way too much money. So you're not going to be in a great situation this season, and they have to figure something out. And one of the things that was talked about before they traded away Joe Tuney, and one of the reasons Tuney was traded away, was because they had $92 million tied up in offensive linemen this season. Now, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head and how that would change if they went out and signed a guy like Ronnie Stanley. It's going to be lower because his number won't be as high as what Joe Tuney's was. And kind of the same thing with eventually Trey Smith, but you're still looking at a significant chunk of the salary cap going towards veteran players on the offensive line, which I don't disagree with. I think that you need to consider doing it, but that's a position that if you can find somebody in the draft, I understand that they don't want to go into it saying that this has to be done, but maybe this is a season where Veach goes, okay, we know we need to get a left tackle. We're going to go make a trade, and we're going to make a trade way before the draft and get up into the top 10 and go chase somebody. You have to get something done, and if you're not going to spend the money on a guy, the only other option is maybe possibly a trade, and I don't even know who would be available to be looking at for a left tackle right now.
Yeah, I don't hear rumors about anybody of any quality that make me excited. So
right.
That's where they sit today. What do they do next is most likely going to be geared towards solidifying this role, stomping the grass, seeing what they can get done. Will the Chiefs be active the first week? That's going to be the question. We're going to look at it next week. So make sure you join us. Make sure you like and sub and hit that bell and get with us because we are looking forward to it. It is the off season, but we appreciate you guys being here with us. A lot of churn is coming, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. Thanks for joining us today. We appreciate it. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you Monday.